little history lesson. In 70 AD, right? First century Jerusalem. Titus and Vespasian, the Romans were ruling Jerusalem at the time. The Romans sacked Jerusalem in 70 AD. Titus and Vespasian was father and son. They sacked Jerusalem, all right? So after the Romans sacked Jerusalem, the Jews fled from the land of Israel, right? So where did they go? Well, according to Rudolf R. Wetzler, who wrote, he's a PhD in Hebrew, in the Hebrew language and Hebrew studies, he makes a claim, he makes a pretty good stance that the Jews fled to West Africa. 1 million Jews fled to West Africa after Titus and Vespasian destroyed the Jewish temple. So Titus and Vespasian destroys the temple. 1 million Jews leave the land of Israel, fleeing Roman persecution, into the interiors of West Africa, Sudan, Mali, Ghana, Nigeria. Then later on, historically, the Arabs and the Portuguese and where the children of Israel had fled to in the interiors of Africa. They had the maps, they had the history, and they knew that the Jews fled into West Africa. So the Muslims sold the Portuguese, sold the black Jewish slaves to the Portuguese and brought them to America. So what I'm saying is, in a nutshell, African Americans are direct descendants of the Jews who fled from Palestine in the first century, 70 AD. African Americans are direct descendants of the Jews from Palestine who fled to West Africa after Titus and Vespasian destroyed the temple.
This is the strongest evidence to demonstrate why ethnic Gentiles can be saved. It says, therefore, remember that one time you Gentiles in the flesh, called the uncircumcision, but is what is called the circumcision, which is made in the flesh by hand. So Paul is saying here, it's almost like he's prophetically aware of someone that would try to say only Israelites can be saved. He goes out his way to say these are really Gentile people. He says they're Gentile in the flesh. They're the uncircumcision. You know, they're called that by the circumcision, which is the Jews. Verse 12, remember that you were at that time separated from Christ, alienated from the commonwealth of Israel. That means they were not in the covenantal promise under the old covenant. And that's why he says they were strangers to the covenant of promise. They had no hope and without God in the world. But now in Christ Jesus, you who were far off, that was the Gentile, have been brought near by the blood of Christ. For he himself is our peace, who has made us both, Gentile, Jew, one, and has broken down in the flesh the dividing wall of hostility. But how did he do this? By abolishing the law of commandments expressed in ordinance, that he might create in himself one new man in the place of the two. How did he do this? By abolishing the law of commandments expressed in ordinance, that he might create in himself one new man in the place of the two, so making peace. And I know the common Black Hebrew Israelite reference is, oh, well, these Gentiles here are just Israelites who are pagan in their mind. They're Gentile in the mind. They're taking on the customs. But that's not what is said in this text. The text has clearly distinguished two people groups, Gentile, Jew. And so my question for, and this is how we can start it off if he's okay with that, is how do you deal with texts like that clearly distinguish ethnic Gentiles and saying they're saved the same way as in Acts 15, the same way Israelites are saved? I guess before you go there, because my question was specifically in Ephesians 2, where it calls them, because I know the common rundown is saying, well, Ephesians 2 is talking about the northern and southern kingdom. Okay, I get that. I understand that your position. But it calls them Gentile in the flesh. It calls them strangers of the covenant. If that was speaking of the southern kingdom or the northern kingdom, whichever you say it is, that's not true of an ethnic Israelite person. You see what I'm saying?
Right. Well, this is why in Romans 9, Paul, the Apostle Paul, he says that to pertain the adoption, the adoption, Romans 9 and 4, the adoption pertained to Israel because they were cut off, because the Most High cut Israel off for a time.
Okay. But they didn't become Gentiles. Even if that was true, they got cut off, which I affirm. There's no time where they became ethnic Gentiles. They were still Israelites. They were just cut off.
No, this is why he wrote Romans. That's what he said in Romans 11. Paul begged the question, well, has God casted off his people, which he foreknew?
This is exactly why I was pretty excited to come into this conversation, because the BHI really reveals the hatred of these religious movements. And as you're sitting here speaking of me needing to be a slave in Revelations or whatever, or me as a dog and not a human being, I'm going to take exception to that, because I am a human being. I'm sitting right here. And this, I mean, I love this, because this shows exactly what I speak about on a daily basis. Thank you.
No, I think you're absolutely right.
This, I mean, I love this, because this shows exactly what I speak about on a daily basis. Thank you.
No, I think you're absolutely right. No, I think you're absolutely right. No, I think you're absolutely right. No, I think you're absolutely right.